founder of CollegeLogic and Total College Advisory. Hans, over the years, has helped over 20,000 families and kids pursue their dreams through a college education. Recently, I saw Hans in a seminar. He was talking about the 8 top reasons people overpay for college. And today we're going to ask him a little bit about that, as well as some tips and tricks to help families save many thousands of dollars. So welcome.
Hey, nice to be here on this beautiful university campus, Sacred Heart University here in Fairfield.
It's a beautiful
Hosting
campus.
us today is it's an awesome place to be.
It is, and it's a beautiful day to be here. Yes. Perhaps you've seen Hans on places like Fox Sports, MSN, CNBC, Forbes. He is a publisher and an author. He's authored 3 best-selling books on college advisory, and he's a man who you really need to get to know.
Oh, thank you.
So how did you start in this, Hans?
Well, that's interesting. It was about 2002, and I had a nice, happy career working for myself, and I was on the sidelines of my son Jeff's high school baseball game. He was in 10th grade at the time, and there was a really good pitcher pitching for his team. He was a senior, and the young fellow's father comes walking in front of me, and I say, "Hey, just wondering, where's Ben?" His name was Ben Kern. Just, "Where's Ben going to college?" He goes, "Oh my God, I think he's going to go to local community college." I go, "Is he going to play baseball?" He goes, "No, he's not going to play baseball." I go, "Why not?" He goes, "Because nobody helped him. He didn't get any help from the coach. He didn't get help from the school. He didn't get help from the athletic director. We didn't get any help at all. I think this is the last game he's ever going to pitch in his life. I've seen him pitch baseball since he was 5 years old, and it's not supposed to end this way." And I go, "Oh." Right at that moment, I said, I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping kids get into college, earning scholarships, playing sports, taking ownership of their life, and seeing their own dreams come true.
What an emotional moment for that dad, and how disappointing for his son if he has dreams of going much further.
And and Rick, when it comes to the world of sports, that's much more the norm and much less the exception. Typically on high school graduation day, 95% or better of competitive sports come to an end.
Wow, how disappointing. Well, let's get into this a little bit, and let's see how we can help save some families some money and maybe give them a little bit of guidance.
I think we can do that, and we can do that in short order.
Terrific. Well, one of the first things I remember was a quote that you made, and that was that most everyone overpays for college. It's just a matter of degree. And you said that depends on what you know or don't know. What did you mean by that?
Well, Rick, there's one thing I know. Everyone will overpay for college.
Really?
It's just a matter of to what degree. And that depends on what people know, or in many cases that we'll talk about in a few minutes, what they don't know. So they may overpay by a couple $1,000s. They may overpay by 5 or 10, 20, 50, maybe even $100,000.
Wow.
So
that's shocking.
So everybody, including myself, when I put my 2 children through college, overpaid. We're all going to do it. Our job is to reduce that, maximize the awards that we get from the university, and manage our college costs accordingly.
So do a lot of families and students not know that there are programs out there that they could have access to that might help them save thousands?
Most people do not know. Most people go about the college process a little bit blindly, relying on other people's opinions, and those are not typically the good sources to go to. So another thing that I know that you might have heard me talk about is you understand the college perspective, or else you're guaranteed to overpay. Now, what that means is we as parents, we have a perspective. The high school has their perspective. And if we rely on parents' perspective or the high school perspective, then we're not going to understand the rules of the game.
Is that because this is new ground for parents, for most?
It is. That's one of the reasons. But the main reason is it's the college game. The college owns the game. They set the rules. They changed the rules.
Oh.
When they change the rules, they don't have to let anybody know.
Uh-huh.
They don't ask if it's okay.
Uh-huh.
They change the rules behind their boardrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Our job is to understand the new rules. When you have new rules, then you need a new rule book.
Mm-hmm.
I make sure we have a current rule book. We're operating from the current set of rules, and we operate from understanding the college perspective. We have to know what the colleges want
Mm-hmm.
from you, the parents. We have to always keep in mind a couple things. Number one, college is a big business.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, what do they want? They want your money. That's what they want.
Okay.
You might think that they want your son or daughter.
Uh-huh.
No, they want your checks.
So this is a business.
It is a business. It's a big business. And since the Great Recession that began in about 2007,
Uh-huh.
it's probably the most thriving industry in the country.
No kidding.
And yet, nobody looks at it as such.
Sure.
Because the general mindset of the public isn't to view college as a business.
No, not at all.
But our job here, and you're going to see as we talk about these things, is to get people to understand that this is a business relationship the families are entering, where the college is a service provider,
Uh-huh.
and you, the family, is a purchaser of educational services.
That
And-
makes sense.
Yep. And you're getting ready to spend anywhere from $50,000 to $250,000 on this acquisition, but nowhere along the way will they allow you to feel like you're a customer of theirs.
Well, this is a new perspective. I
It
don't
is.
believe I've ever talked to anybody who spoke about it this way.
Now,
Wow, very interesting.
and so that is the foundation for everything else. That is the starting point, the understanding that it's up to you. When you go in and buy a car in a car dealership,
Uh-huh.
do you let them set the price? They set the initial price.
Yes, but
The
not at all.
Yeah, the college sets the initial price. They have a published tuition, room and board, books.
Wait, let me ask you, are you saying that there is room for movement in that college price at universities and colleges?
Well, Rick, when you buy a car, do you pay full price?
Never?
When you go out and buy a house, do you offer full price?
Never thought about it.
So,
That way as it
so
relates.
now you're going to go to college.
Uh-huh.
Are you just going to pay the price that they're asking for?
Wow, never even occurred to me.
Yeah, they are. In many cases, they're like a car dealership. They have a posted price, and they have a price that they're willing
Uh-huh.
to take. And our job is to get to that point.
I'm sure they'll appreciate that analogy.
Well, they don't often, but
That's really fascinating.
it's the families.
Wow.
And see, because sometimes it's the first time going through it, they're caught off guard by this,
Uh-huh.
and they're not prepared for it.
Yeah.
And what happens too many times, Rick, I'll never forget this fella last year. I meet him in the gym on a Wednesday.
Mhm.
He tells me he's leaving the next day to take his daughter to Georgetown University to drop her off as a freshman. That's Thursday.
Yep.
So I go, wow, that's great. Friday morning, he calls me from Georgetown University. He says, Hans, I'm dropping my daughter off at college today, and I have no idea how I'm going to pay the bill. What do I do? I go, well, that's a little bit late to be coming to that conclusion.
Oh, sure.
So we want to get the people's interest and attention.
Uh-huh.
Parents of 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th graders, 10th graders, way ahead of the game to understand that you've got this big purchase coming down the pipeline, and there are things that you can do to prepare for it and minimize and manage better the college costs.
And that tip alone is worth the entire time that we're spending here.
Yeah, good.
That's an eye-opener for me, and I'm sure for many families as well. Let's go back to here. One of the things we were talking about before, and that you were talking about, these 8 top reasons people overpay, was something called FAFSA, F-A-F-S-A. When is the right time to file FAFSA, and what's the priority funding deadline? What's that all about?
So we have what I call the 8 top reasons. And we go down in descending order or ascending order. We started with the eighth, and we can work our way down to the number one reason people will pay. But the eighth one is simple. It's a financial aid form called FAFSA, and the link is live on January 1st or 2nd every year. So families of high school seniors preparing for college in the fall need to fill out the financial aid form. Even if they don't think that they are a qualifier for financial aid, you should just fill it out. It should be a standard procedure. So that's number one. A lot of families don't even fill it out. But it should be standard procedure, and you got to do it for 4 years, not just one, but 4 years. And what happens with financial aid, and we're talking about federally funded financial aid, is the federal government allocates a certain amount of money to each school to offer in federal financial aid. So that's a pool. Now that pool gets distributed to the first people who apply for financial aid.
The first people have priority.
The first people have priority, and there's a deadline priority date, typically February 1st. So if you submit your financial aid form in the month of January, you are in that first pool of people eligible for a distribution. If you file the financial aid form after February 1st, you go into a secondary pool. In some cases, and many times, the money's dried up by then. So I get people calling me that says, my next door neighbor got financial aid, and he makes a lot more money than I do. How come I didn't get any?
I've heard that before.
Yeah. Well, it might be because they filed on January 5th and you filed March 15th.
Wow, terrific.
And you missed out. Wow. So that's the number one, and that's number 8, and that's the simple one.
Wow. I see that EFC stands for Expected Family Contribution. Who determines that?
Okay, so that's a great question. EFC, this is a this is an important number to understand. When you fill out your FAFSA, it immediately generates an EFC. It's a complicated formula the federal government applies to the information they receive to determine what your expected family contribution is. Now, it's their way of saying we think you can afford this amount, but obviously it has nothing to do with affordability. But it establishes the point in which you may or may not be eligible to receive financial aid. So if EFC comes into play is when your EFC is less than the net cost of college. By definition, for example, if the net cost of college is $40,000 and your EFC is $25,000, that's a $15,000 gap. And by definition, you are a qualifier for financial need.
How can you use EFC to your advantage?
Well, because once you are by definition eligible for need. When the report comes to you from the college and you're not getting it, and the college has to report every year to be able to get this pool of money. They have to report every year to the federal government what percentage of need they meet. So if they report that they meet 67% of need, and by definition, your EFC is $25,000, your net cost is $40,000, you have $15,000 need. If they report that they meet need at 67%, then by calculation, you should get a $10,000 award. So when you don't get that, and most colleges want to look sideways at that, but when you don't, you call them up and say, I see that you report need at 67%, my EFC is 25, my net cost is 40, where's my $10,000?
Never heard of any of these before.
No.
To be honest.
No,
I imagine most families haven't.
Maybe 1 out of 1,000 will ever take that approach in a financial aid office.
So this is one of the things that you can do and that you help families do.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's move on a little bit if we can here. There are 6 buckets of financial resources that you were speaking of. What are those 6?
Yeah, and we could do a whole seminar just on these 6. But when a family receives what's called the financial award letter, that comes from the university, typically towards the end of March of the senior year.
Okay.
It recaps all their expenses and the awards that they've given you to arrive at your net cost.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important is to understand what are the awards. So quickly, the awards are grouped into 6 categories. One is merit awards, scholarships and grants.
Mm-hmm.
Scholarships, merit awards, and athletic scholarships.
Okay.
We want to maximize that because that reduces our cost.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 is we have what's called university grants. Those are endowment, oftentimes related grants. We like to receive those because that reduces our cost.
Yep.
Then we have what's called university need-based aid.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we want to maximize that, yes, but that is the financial part of the financial aid package.
Okay.
And that's a 1-year award. So we might get some money this year, doesn't mean we're going to get it next year.
And that's why what you said before, every year, January
You have
1st, refile.
Refund.
Okay.
Yep. And then number 4, you have what's called federal need-based aid.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the federal Pell Grant that comes from filing the financial aid form, FAFSA. And then we have student loans
Mm-hmm.
as number 5, bucket of resource. And then we have number 6 is a work-study program. Now what's interesting is you might have been thinking when I said that, we're talking about awards
Mm-hmm.
and buckets of resources, and student loans are grouped in on that.
Interesting.
And the university actually will list loans as an award.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't believe that loans are
Okay.
awards. We want to focus only on dollars that reduce our cost. Out-of-pocket cost,
Okay.
and worry about how we're going to pay for it later. So those
So
are the,
I would imagine families would have a very difficult time on their own negotiating through all of these programs, much less even being aware of them.
well, right, and negotiating is a whole other story, but you've got to be aware of them because you've got to look to maximize each one.
Mm-hmm.
And keep in mind, merit awards come out of admissions office.
Mm-hmm.
An athletic award comes out of the athletic office.
Everyone with a separate budget.
Grants
Uh-huh.
might come out of a department of study.
Uh-huh.
The student financial aid comes out of financial aid office.
Mhm.
So that's 4 different places on a university. You can't just go to one office and say, hey, let's talk about scholarships and grants and financial aid.
Uh-huh.
You have to know
Yes.
the sources, and you have to go to each one and try to maximize each one because they tend to be independent of the others.
The more you're talking about this, the more I reflect back on what you said earlier about this is a business.
It's a big business.
Wow.
And it's a business machine. It's a business machine,
Uh-huh.
and the colleges are masters at it.
Wow. I don't doubt.
And taking advantage of unsuspecting parents along the way.
I can well imagine. Again, I've never heard of any of these. When you spoke and said that if they don't apply early enough, they can miss out on the first round of acceptance and scholarships. How does applying early help with scholarships? I mean, I think you've alluded to it a little bit already, but perhaps
Yeah.
you could talk a little more about it.
Well, typically speaking, families wait on the application process. And families just think that, oh, okay, the application deadline is January 1st or January 31st. And
Uh-huh.
they think as long as they get that application in under the deadline, they will be fine.
Yep.
But acceptances and scholarships,
Mm-hmm.
remember, scholarships come out of the admission office. It is a tool. Scholarships, even though they call it merit,
Mm-hmm.
it's less a merit award today than in the past.
How so?
It is more a marketing tool. It is that discount that they will offer parents off that tuition cost
Mm-hmm.
to try to incentivize you, the prospective
Induce
client,
the child to come to the university.
and pay.
I never knew that.
So it's a tool. It's really a marketing tool.
Uh-huh.
The admissions office has a certain authority over that marketing tool.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe the admission office, as an example, can offer up to $20,000 merit scholarship award.
Mm-hmm.
It's our job to know what the maximum is,
Yep.
and then our job as a family to get as much of that as we can.
Sure.
So when you get to know the college early, you get into their system early, you get to know the admissions counselor personally.
Yeah.
When you submit early action, early application, either one, by like October 15th, you are really telling them that if you give me an acceptance with a good scholarship, I'm likely to enroll. So you are a known applicant, and that person will be a little bit more motivated to grant the acceptance and offer a more significant scholarship.
So you're actually stressing having a personal relationship with people at the university early.
Right.
And having a personal relationship is almost unheard of, yes?
Right, and yet, typically, people avoid it altogether.
Interesting.
Logically, it makes perfect sense.
Of course it does.
Because the admission decision, which is two parts, acceptances and scholarships, is a human decision.
Yes, it is.
So we're all humans. We all buy from, we associate with, we accept people that we know and we like and we trust. So if I am the admissions counselor and you are the prospective student, and I know you and I like you, and maybe your GPA is not quite high enough, maybe your SAT score is not high enough, but I like you, I like your person, I like your vision, and I want you to become a part of the university, I'm more inclined to give you an acceptance and a larger scholarship award to get you to come.
So you're saying that, like in everything else in the world, there's an exception to every rule, and universities as businesses are no different because there are exceptions.
That's
the
right.
guidelines aren't.
They're not black and white like people think.
That's fascinating. That's fascinating.
So you don't always get what you think you deserve. Oh, I got a GPA, I got a big SAT score, that means I'm going to get this. No, you get what you earn. And what you earn oftentimes is dependent upon that relationship you build within the university.
Well, that reminds me, you told me before we sat down here today a personal story. And that was a story, I think, of your son, and who was applying to a bunch of different universities. And I guess there was scholarship potential on the table for him. And there was a little bit of relationship building that was going on early on, and it worked out in his favor, as I understand.
Right, because with all the communications, which included a half dozen visits back and forth with them, and in between them coming to see him seeing them, meeting the admissions people, meeting the coaches, meeting the athletic directors, with all that interaction going on, by the time it came to decision, we knew what they were capable of.
You're saying financially?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. They knew what we needed. And it's up to the collected heads to meet at that happy point in which they get what they want and we get what we want. And you know, Rick, in life, that's when the deal is made.
Sure. So if I'm reading a little bit between the lines here, they could have given any range of scholarship help to you and your son, and because they knew you and because you had a relationship going back for quite some time, you were able to come to a final decision that worked out for both of you.
That's correct.
It's terrific.
Only because we had those relationships, and with those relationships, people open up. Remember, you can't just walk into an admissions office and say, show me your hand. They're going to say, I don't have a hand.
Is it a poker game here?
It is. It is a poker game.
Okay.
So only in life, and this is no different, when you have trust built amongst yourselves, will you open up? And when you get to that point, and the university personnel open up, and we open up, now we have the basis of a deal.
Oh, I love this. Well, let's move on a little bit here. Back in the day, I applied to 3 schools. What's the matter with that today? Is that just so totally random?
Yeah.
Because I think you were talking about that if you don't have a strategy for submitting applications and receiving financial rewards, you can be left out pretty much in the rain.
Yeah, so what happens is, and Rick, I did the same thing. I applied to like 3 or 4 colleges, and got into one. I wound up just going to that one. Whether it was right or wrong, who knows? But when you look at the parent perspective again, now we're thinking college perspective, parent perspective. When you look at the parent perspective, then parent perspective thinks, oh, we just need to apply to a couple of colleges, get a couple of acceptances. Oh, Jeff or Kelly, what's your favorite schools? Let's just do a couple of applications and pick a school.
Yeah.
Well, when you do that, you don't create options, and you don't create any leveraging at all. So I approach the admission process, the application process, from the standpoint of let's secure options. I like 8 or 10 or 12 applications.
Oh, interesting.
I want 6 to 8 acceptances. When we have 6 to 8 acceptances, we create a range of experience options, educational options, financial options. So we create a range of options. So that's good. The plan or the strategy is to make sure we have some schools in there like a really good state university that costs less.
Okay.
Or a good school that we feel like we can get a big scholarship at. So what we want to do is create a foundation or baseline for cost. And let's just say we get into that good state university, it costs $25,000. And then we get a $15,000 scholarship from a $45,000 school. That takes our cost down to $30,000. So now we have a couple schools creating a baseline in the $25,000 to $30,000 a year range. That's good. But let's say now the school that we really like costs $50,000 and they only gave us $5,000 scholarship.
What do you do with that?
Well, what most parents do typically is they go to that school and they pay that bill, pay that $45,000, and I would say to them that they are well overpaying for college because there is an appeal process.
There is.
In the admissions office, and it's a formal process. This isn't just guesswork. You don't just pull it out of the sky.
Yep.
It's an appeal based on larger scholarships from comparable colleges. So if you have a $5,000 scholarship award here,
And that's the school you want to go to?
Yep. And you have a $15,000 scholarship award from a comparable university, has to be a comparable university,
Okay.
then you submit an appeal form, takes 15 minutes by the way, attach a copy of that $15,000 scholarship and turn it into the admission office, and they may do nothing, so it's 15 minutes spent and you get nothing out of it. They may meet halfway and increase your scholarship award $5,000 a year times 4. That's $20,000. That's
Sure,
a good
a lot of money.
15-minute good return on 15 minutes. And in some cases, they may even meet the other scholarship award.
So nothing ventured, nothing gained.
Yep. Nothing ventured. You save 15 minutes of time.
Well, that's a fantastic tip.
Yeah. If you venture and spend that 15 or 20 minutes, then you might save yourself $20,000. Now, but Rick, back to your question. If you didn't generate those options in the first place, then you have nothing to staple to that appeal form.
Absolutely.
So you're paying full price. It's like going to a car dealership and saying, hey, look, that's the car I want no matter what.
That's incredible. 15 minutes of time could save somebody $10, $20, $30, $40, $50,000.
That's right.
That's the best time ever spent tonight.
Hey, look, I like saying 15 minutes can save you $50,000.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Wow. Well, they understand or they don't understand that college costs are negotiable, which is what you're talking about now. Negotiations, a word that we used a little bit earlier. I don't think you can negotiate with colleges, and how do you do this besides that? That's one of probably many ways, I would imagine.
Yeah. Okay, here's the interesting thing. I like to say to the people, you heard it in the seminar, negotiations begin right now.
So at the beginning.
Yeah, so you're a parent of a 9th grader, and I say to you, negotiations begin right now. Your eyeballs pop out and go, what do you mean? I'm negotiating right now?
Yeah.
So,
You're years away.
literally,
That's what you think,
figuratively,
you know.
not literally.
Yes.
So the negotiations begin by laying the groundwork
Mm-hmm.
for discussions later on, building the relationships, getting to know them. So what a college will not do is respond to the parent who comes in at the end that they don't even have never met before
Sure.
and say, this is outlandish, these costs are ridiculous, I can't pay this, you have to take money off.
Mm-hmm.
Because they get
It
that,
doesn't make sense that they would respond to that.
they get that by the thousands.
Yep.
And they just turn their nose at that, and these parents go, they were arrogant about it and they didn't pay us any mind or attention. I go, well, why would they? They don't know you from anybody else. You're just another parent just coming in at the end saying it's too expensive.
So what you're saying, and I've heard it in a number of ways, is that you distinguish yourself by starting the process early, by getting the university or college to know you and your family and your child early. And so it's not too early to start at ninth grade.
Right, and let's understand when we say get the college to know,
Mm-hmm.
for students, there were what I call 3 key decision makers. The
Mhm.
people that are going to make a decision on your future. One is the admission office,
Uh-huh.
and a counselor that specifically might be assigned to your application.
Okay.
Then you got the financial aid office.
Mhm.
They handle the costs. And then you have the Department of Studies.
Mhm.
So if you want to be in business or science or engineering, there's a Department of Studies there, and they need to know who you are long before you submit an application. Those are decision makers. If you're an athlete, of course, the 4th decision maker is the college coach.
Okay. Wow. This is great stuff. What's wrong with being what I guess you call the stealth applicant?
Okay, so I can get in front of a large audience of young high school students
Mm-hmm.
and ask them, how many of you want to be a stealth applicant? And believe it or not,
Uh-huh.
some hands would go up, but
Uh-huh.
nobody's going like this.
Uh-huh.
People going like this, and they're
Yeah.
looking around to see what other people are doing,
Uh-huh.
and then they start thinking, maybe I don't want to be a stealth applicant.
Mm-hmm.
So Rick, again, stealth applicant isn't just a term that we pull out of midair.
Mm-hmm.
Stealth applicant is really a term that is used in the admission office to label applicants. And stealth, like the stealth bomber,
Uh-huh.
what does that mean? It means it's
Under the
flying
radar.
flying under the radar.
Right.
You're not supposed to be able to know who they are
Mm-hmm.
or where they are.
So, Hans, the next question that I have for you is what are the costs associated with picking the wrong school, and what do you mean by the wrong school?
Okay, so now we're at the point at which we've talked about a lot of different ways to either save a few thousand, maybe 5 or 10,000, a few times over. Now we're getting down to the big ones. These are the big rocks.
Uh-huh.
And one of the greatest fears parents have is sending their child off to the wrong school.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that's often done because they did not do the homework or the diligence and understanding colleges and,
Okay.
and know what colleges are available. So they've ended the process by just randomly choosing some colleges for applications because they're known colleges, they're named colleges, and getting a couple acceptances and going, okay, I think I'll go there,
Mm-hmm.
without giving it any real forethought about why is this college right. Besides academically, culturally, socially, geographically, financially, why is this the right college?
I see.
So when you make that kind of random selection, then you're leaving college to chance. And
That makes
oftentimes, these young high school students going into college, they wind up at the wrong college.
Mhm.
Culturally, they're not comfortable. Socially, it's not satisfying. Maybe educationally, they don't really know what they're doing, and they're just taking classes. And ultimately, one or two things happen. They don't like the college.
Mm-hmm.
They had to transfer, which can be sometimes painful emotionally and also costly.
Uh-huh.
They can lose a semester worth of classes.
Which means they would have to make that
extend.
up, which would cost more money in the back end.
That's right. So
Uh-huh.
we're getting to the point in which we're going to start talking about extended terms of college. And anything that causes an extended term of college
Costs
comes
more
to
money.
you at a big, not 3,000 or 5,000,
Significant.
but chunks of 20s.
So you're saying an extra year, year and a half of college, because they've changed course, changed school,
Yeah.
changed
Yep. Just
significant.
yeah. There's two causes of that. One is they go to the wrong college, or number two, they choose the wrong major, and they change majors. So initially, just talking about change of schools, if you just leave choosing a college to a random process, well, then you're not doing your homework, and you might wind up at the wrong school. And when you do, you have transfers, and you have sometimes disillusioned students that aren't the happy college kids that we want them to be. And eventually, even though it's intangible cost, it comes at a cost.
So if somebody works with you directly, it seems to me what I'm getting out of this is they actually should start working with you sooner, so that you can not only identify the college, but you can also identify the career path, so that when they go, they can be a happier student, a more successful student, stay the course, not get that extra year, year and a half because they've changed course middle, saving their families tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and again, let's think about this from the college perspective. So we always have to, no matter what, always look at the college perspective, as opposed to the parent perspective or the high school perspective that says, hey, you don't have to need to know what you want to study. You don't have to need to know what you do. You know how many times, Rick, somebody has said to me, oh, they'll figure it out when they get there.
Problematic, yeah.
Yeah, who's they? Who's going to figure that out?
Yeah.
Oh, well, they have guidance career counselors at these prestigious universities, and they will help you sort it out. Oh,
At what cost?
At what cost?
Sure.
So, two big factors. One is they go to the wrong school to begin with, so we already covered that a little bit. But the next it's the biggest, number one reason people overpay. The single biggest factor and the single top reason people overpay for college is they choose the wrong career path or the wrong study path, the wrong major. And they don't put in the diligence ahead of time to understand
What it entails.
careers, the types of majors and studies that qualify you for those types of careers. And instead, people are picking majors because it's an interesting topic. Well, there are a lot of topics interesting to me, but I don't go to college and spend that kind of money to just study interesting topics.
Sure.
We do it for the purpose of building qualifications for potential jobs that we might have an interest. So while we don't have to know what job it is, we do need to have a direction, because if you don't have a specific 4-year plan to graduate, it's your plan. You, the parent, you have a plan for your son or daughter to graduate in 4 years, then the college will plan an extra year or two
Oh, really?
for you. Now,
Well, that makes sense. If I may interject here, I'm thinking about a major pain point I would imagine for both young students thinking about a future in college and for parents, and that is when you ask your child, what do you want to do with your life, and they don't know. And maybe this, from what you're saying, is one of the reasons that they should be speaking with CollegeLogic ahead of time to help identify that, so they know specifically, so that actually they're not maybe taken advantage of, as you're pointing out, by a university or college, knowing full well that they're going to get an extra year and a half of dollars and time out of a child, again, being a business.
yeah, and let's try to simplify it a little bit. A very complicated topic, but simplify it. You may have a passion for healthcare, and you want to be in healthcare. You don't have to know in 11th grade that you want to be a doctor or a nurse or in research or physical therapy. You don't have to know that. But you do need to know, do you have a passion
I see.
for patient care.
I see.
And if you have a passion for patient care and you want to be an advocate for improved patient care, then you're going to go to college to study a combination of health sciences or nursing or clinical studies, biology, chemistry, to prepare yourself to go to the next round of college and be a little in graduate school and be a little bit more specific as you go, but you're creating the options so that you're in that little funnel leading up with options. So if you make any small little changes, you're not leaving that and changing a whole nother tunnel or funnel.
Yeah.
When you leave that and go to something altogether different, and you do it in your sophomore year, which is typically when it happens, then you are now committing yourself to likely one more year of college, a 5th year.
You've just guaranteed yourself to be a 5-year student.
A 5-year student. Yep. Now you're on the 5-year plan.
Wow.
And that 5th year on average comes to you at a cost of $50,000.
Huge.
And let me ask you this one question, because you're a pretty logical fellow, I believe. If I was to say that every time your son or daughter changes their major while in college, it's going to cost you $30,000.
God forbid.
How many times is acceptable for your son or daughter to change their major?
Not even once.
Not even once. Right. So if you know this in advance, then you might want to start working on it when your child's in 10th, 11th, 12th grade. Not wait until they're sophomores or juniors in college and they come home. I got a call over the Christmas break from a great young gal who is a junior in college, 2.5 years into an education degree to be a teacher. And after doing some volunteer teaching during her junior year, she comes home at the holiday and says, "I don't want to be a teacher." And she,
well, what a shock.
Yep. And they call me in. Now this is late in the game, but to change all of that means she will be in college 2 extra years.
$100,000.
$100,000
on average. It sounds like you have your own health care program. And what I'm talking about here is that speaking with you early on actually is a preventative for something like that happening down the road.
Well, it is a
preventative medicine.
Right.
In essence.
Right. And so what we've talked about here are some things that are tangible cost savings. This is very intangible. But it's also, just like me taking a multivitamin every day, it's intangible. I don't know what benefit it's given me, but I'm hoping that it's saving me from the big cost.
I hear you.
It might not keep me from catching a cold, but I'm hoping it helps me otherwise. So it is preventative, and Rick, the most important thing is it's under your control to do these things. This is not; these are not things to just leave to chance. To be proactive and involved, you actually have a lot more control over this. You actually have a lot more power over it than you believe.
One would never know. One would never know. That gets us actually hands to the final question, and that is that you had said that a lot of students don't have a 4-year plan for graduation with a meaningful degree, which kind of ties in with what you're talking about here. Having no direction usually ends up with some pretty horrible results, and we've spoken about a few of them. What do you mean by college plans? Well, the extra year you've talked about, but 5.8 years sounds horrible when you plan on a 4-year education. And
well,
that sounds like it might happen more often than we think.
Yeah, he just said 5.8 years, and again, you didn't pull that number out of the clear blue sky. That happens to be the national average time it takes, the national average in this country today, that it takes for college students to get an undergraduate 4-year degree. That is the national average. And the national average for a incoming freshman college student to graduate in 4 years is only 40%. So it's a 40% rate of high school students going into college So they will graduate in 4 years only at a 40% rate. And just like everything else, when we talk about financial aid and colleges have to report those numbers to the federal government, colleges have to report their 4-year graduation rate.
Oh, so this is where they come from. These are statistically accurate numbers.
Yeah, because they have to be reported. So everybody's familiar with like U.S. News and World Report rankings of colleges. These are all factors in the rankings. You have to report these statistics.
Unbelievable.
Yep. Now, one last thing you just mentioned, meaningful degree. Meaningful degree, yes, on time. It's just not, let's get a 4-year on-time degree. It needs to be meaningful. Meaningful means that when you get done with it, you can do something with it.
You can get a job.
You can get a job
You
and get paid.
a career path.
Yep. And so you just need to know before you get into it what the possible outcomes are. And if you feel like you need to make $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 upon graduation, then you need to qualify yourself for those jobs, and you've got to take certain paths of studies to get them.
Sure.
And if you take a standard degree that just directs you to a $30,000 a year job, well, when you get done, that's what you're going to have.
Yep.
And if that meets your satisfaction, then that's okay. But if it doesn't, then know that in advance.
This is fascinating information.
Yeah, thanks.
You know, while we're at it, I think there's a couple more tips that I think that you might be able to give the audience watching this today. Again, they're financial. We've covered some of them, but I have a little sheet here, and I love the idea of saving people money, saving families a lot of pain and anguish, particularly spending an extra $50,000 or $100,000 that they never planned on. So the first one was, I think we had talked prior to the show, is about 3 underground secrets to maximize scholarship potential. Could you tell us what those 3 are?
Well, one of them is to maximize your SAT or ACT score.
How do you do that?
Now, in a time in which parents are telling me, oh, SATs are not as important as they used to be. Well, that's hogwash.
Okay.
Sure, colleges, some of them have gone to what's called test optional, where if you do poorly, you don't have to submit the test grade.
Okay.
But guess what? If you don't submit your test grades, what does that tell me? The evaluator of you.
I think you're over in another pile.
You're in another pile because you didn't do very well. So SATs in many colleges are slotted for scholarships. You go up 100 points, you get a couple thousand more. Go up another 100 points, you get another couple thousand more.
Oh, so there's actually money that can be tied with
to
specific...
the SAT score.
No kidding.
Or ACT score. So I have, my advice that you see in CollegeLogic is, by January of your sophomore year, start preparing for your SATs. Get a Princeton review book.
No, I've never heard that before.
Preparing.
That's great advice.
5 pages a week studying. By the time you are a junior and you're taking SATs, you will score higher and you will land a large scholarship.
Fantastic advice.
The second thing is, as early as in 8th grade, start looking ahead to see where you can position yourself for classes of rigor. That's another word for AP classes.
AP classes, okay.
And qualify yourself. It might be in math and it might be in science, but find one of these paths that you're better at than others and start qualifying for those classes in 8th grade. You can't qualify for them in 10th, 11th grade. You have to qualify for them starting in 8th grade so that you can be in the AP class in 9th and be on the AP track. Colleges reward classes of rigor, a rigorous schedule. They value rigor. They value AP. Not to get confused with, we're not going to talk today about weighted GPAs. They're not focused on weighted GPAs. They're focused on
advanced placement
advanced
classes
placement.
in high school. Okay. Excellent.
Yeah. And then the third thing that we've already talked about is get in the system, get in the college system for tracking at a young age. Become known to the college in 10th grade.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Be in their system for tracking. And come time for the application, submit it early, and you will improve your acceptance rate and your scholarship level.
Fantastic. Now, you had said before that you could give us one secret that could save $50,000. I think you've already given us several.
Yeah, well,
to be honest.
Yeah. Well, the one we talked about, it's the intangible one.
Yeah.
If you don't plan on a 4-year degree, then the college will plan an additional year for you.
Well, it sounds like
It's
really,
like,
based on statistics, an additional 1.8 years.
Yep.
For
right,
you.
Right. So
Yeah.
if you treat it by default,
Mm-hmm.
which means you don't pay attention to it, and you're reactive rather than proactive, your son or daughter is likely to spend an extra year in college unnecessarily, and that comes at a $50,000 price tag. So the one real inside secret is you got to get on that career path and study path, doing some internships and job shadowing experiences as early as in 10th and 11th grade.
Uh-huh. Well, I'm just thinking about families and friends that I know that would have an extra $50,000 if they took your advice, and what they could do with that $50,000. It's a heck of a vacation for mom and dad.
Hey, people say to me, people say so often, Rick, if I just had that extra $100,000 right here in my pocket right
Sure,
now,
exactly.
I might be able to retire a lot sooner.
You betcha.
And you talked about a pain point earlier.
That's a pain point.
Families understand that when they make these mistakes, it really does affect their retirement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's huge.
Yep.
And you have to make probably $70,000 to pay $50,000. So how many years of savings is that? Last, a secret that could save you $10,000 a year. You had mentioned secure a quality state school acceptance along with a couple of big scholarship options.
Yeah. So the one little secret about saving the $10,000, we touched base on it. It's called appeals.
Uh-huh.
Appeals, appeals, appeals. The vast majority of families are not at all familiar with appeals, so they just don't do it. But going into this, you have two paths, or two options. One is you appeal in the admissions office for a higher merit award based on other comparable scholarship offers. And number two, you can appeal in the financial aid office for financial aid based on EFC.
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just go in the finance office and say, hey, I want more money, I need more money.
Sure.
You go in there with the facts. Here's my EFC, here's my net cost, you report, you meet need at this percentage, where's my share?
Mm-hmm.
So those are both 20-minute appeal processes. Takes me only 20 minutes. There's a form for each. You can't just readily find it on the website. You have to ask for it. You fill it out and submit it. And just that can oftentimes save you $10,000.
That's amazing. Well, thank you very much. You've saved, actually myself, many friends of mine, and many people, tens of thousands of dollars. It's fantastic information, man.
Good.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yep.